Hi, I'm Mark Tyrrell, and this is IFAI Talking Textiles, where we talk to successful companies about their experiences in the fabric industry. This podcast is brought to you by IFAI, a not-for-profit association representing the international specialty fabrics marketplace. IFAI hosts several exciting events throughout the year, including its upcoming 100-year anniversary of IFAI Expo, happening this November 1st to 4th, 2021 in Nashville, Tennessee. A great venue, great live music. I recommend everybody get down there. IFAI Expo 2021 is the textiles and fabrics industry flagship show for sourcing, networking, and education. Register today at ifaixpo.com. To learn more about IFAI's other upcoming events, visit ifai.com/events. Welcome, everyone, to the first episode of the IFAI Talking Textiles. I'm Mark Tyrrell, and co-hosting with me today is Alex Petizian. Alex, thanks a lot for hosting with me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be part of the inaugural IFAI Talking Textiles podcast.
Absolutely. For those of you joining us for the first time, obviously this is the first time, the whole goal behind it is to really kind of create some Canadian content to highlight the Canadian textile industry and offer some Canadian centric content to our division. In trying to come up with that, we also wanted something that was going to allow us to kind of keep in touch with our membership and add value for our membership during the interim times between shows and that, especially in, the Canadian shows are usually down to every 2 or 3 years. So we want to keep those lines of communication open, stay relevant, and provide value for our membership. And we'd love to hear back from you to see if you guys are enjoying this, if you'd like to see different content or different stories, or you have suggestions of stories you'd like us to cover, or people that you'd like us to sit down with and have these conversations with. It'd be very much appreciated. So without further ado, I'll start by giving you a bit of a background on myself and Alex. We're actually suppliers to the industry. So me on distribution and Alex on the manufacturing side. But the point is, we're gonna sit down and interview folks that are really from the real engine of the business, which is the people that are putting together the projects and the products that really represent our industry in the marketplace and to the different and to the general public. And we have one such individual with us today. We're welcoming Brydon Roe of Shade Sales Canada. Welcome to the fold, Brydon.
Thank you. An honor to be the first podcast guest, and I think it's great effort what you guys are doing. I hope, as we say, for the members, they're going to get benefit from this, and I hope to get, as a member, get benefit from it as well. So thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Happy to have you, Brydon. And I'm going to get the first question fired up here for you.
Great. As
the first show or first podcast, and with the new listeners coming on board, we'd like to understand where our interviewees, what their background is and how they got to where they are today. Like I can't imagine, you're playing Little League one day, you hit a line drive and you stopped halfway to first base and said, I want to be part of the fabric industry. So, so the first question is basically, how did you get, why shade sales, why the textile industry? How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, great question. And absolutely not. Was it something I woke up when I was 8 and said, "Oh, this is what I dreamt about. This is what I want to do." It didn't come to me that way. It was more romantic, perhaps, I guess, in that I did move to Australia and New Zealand in '95, somewhere in there, and I finished university, just in business administration, business commerce, and moved overseas to do some traveling and working over there in the boating industry. When I was younger, my brother and I had a windsurfing business called Sails Up. And so we used to teach and rent windsurfing equipment, etc. And did that in Ontario, and then wanted to continue in the boating industry and move to Australia. And it was a family visit from my dad that came over to visit me while I was living there. I ended up living there for 3 to 5 years overall. But anyway, he came over and noticed the shade sales everywhere, which were obviously places I was taking him, which is over there. They are prevalent in parks and schools and all over the place as a great, obviously for protection of the kids from extreme sun, less important than it is today in North America, but certainly becoming more so in Canada with the sun and all that stuff. So he noticed that and thought what a great product to bring back to Canada. He was in the construction business. I was still living in Australia. And so kind of got it started back in 2000, at least incorporated Shade Sales Canada Inc. and slowly built from there. And as I say, with a building background on my dad's side and myself as well over the years as a kid, and just building things at home and his home, etc. We just incorporated that into some of the things we were doing, decks, etc., for customers. And then Shade Sales grew its own legs over the years, and here we are. But since we incorporated, about 20 some odd years, but mainly going charge with my wife for probably 7 to 10 years with her. And so now she and I are the principals, and my dad's retired, and that's sort of the quick history.
Nice. You kind of started it, you were kind of straddling Australia and Canada, weren't you, like in the beginning, in terms of bringing it over and working with some manufacturers on the Australian side before?
Yeah, no, exactly, Mark. Yes, I was. It was starting over here. It was seasonal, of course, and it still is seasonal to a large degree. But we're now planning for projects that are in the summers. In the winters, we're doing that work in the winters. But initially, it was just seasonal shade sail installs here. So I would go back to Australia, work with a company there called Advanced Shade Systems, who we and then I brought my wife over as well and learned from them, learned from other shade sail makers down there, and sort of just tried to amalgamate what from the good and the bad and the ugly down there and the excellent, and sort of generate from all that education sort of the best product up here, which we think we're pretty confident that we've done with that work over in Australia. So I did straddle that for a good few years. And even, I probably would have gone back this winter to some of the relationships I have over there, just to, get caught up on some new things going on. But due to COVID, of course, it didn't happen. But that is a relationship we keep going over there. And that's certainly part of the learning process and the ability for us to do as well as we've done in a short time.
So Brydon, was it a hit right away in Canada or North America? Like how did you bring it over here? How did you bring the shade sails over here? My assumption is that they weren't being sold here at all.
Correct. And to a large degree, there's a couple small players in Canada doing what we do, full supply turnkey solutions. I don't think there's anyone manufacturing and supplying, installing, et cetera, as we are. And we have representation or affiliates throughout the country now that represent us and work with us and do that. So no, it was certainly a slow start. I mean, it was my dad and I said to my daughter, who's 9, I said, because my phone is constantly going now from customers, and when I'm at the office or wherever. And I said to her, wasn't that long ago that we might get a call a day or a couple calls a week about shade sail. So it was a real slow start, and people loved it. It was just, it's a challenging product because you have to, it's not just the sail itself, which is the most inexpensive component, as people in the industry would know, even with vinyl product, or tents, it's the structures is so much part of it. The fabric is a small part of it. So that can be sometimes a deterrent to getting in the market, because you got to build the structure. So the expense of that. So, but no, as far as the aesthetics go and the wow factor, it was a hit, but it took a while, and being present and building the website and getting a reputation, that took a good number of years. And we're still working on that. We're still, obviously, as you guys, as a lot of people listening with your website, that's a consistent project. You're always evolving, changing, being fluid, understanding, learning. And so, as cliche as that sounds, it's still something that we're still navigating every year, every day, every week. But no, it was a slowish start, but that's 18 years, as I say, 20 years now, by the time since we were incorporated. It was a real slow start when my dad first started. It's just grown from being here, essentially, answering the phone all those years, having the website all those years, answering the emails. Essentially, and now we're quite busy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, 2 people, my dad and I, to 17 or so in our peak season.
Wow.
Yeah.
Actually, I'd love to come around to that to see what the company looked like before. But I'm actually curious. You mentioned the background that you have, the relationships that you've created with folks over in Australia. How was that starting out when you kind of walked in and kind of wanted to learn about their industry and stuff? Whatever, were they a little apprehensive? Or was it like open kimono? Let's get this started. Let's get our product in Canada. And also, I guess you guys have the construction background, but I'm guessing there's engineering aspects to putting things into tension and stuff like that. Were they open to kind of letting you in on their secrets and on their way of doing things, I guess?
Good question. And, I had a relationship with the main guy that I work with mostly in Australia, Advanced Shade Systems, Eric Lewis, great guy. And he's now 70, but he's similar company to ours, small, but was very top quality. And so we were buying from him when we first started, because we didn't start out making our own shade sails. It wasn't until sort of 9 years ago we did that. So we were importing from Australia, from Eric. So obviously it was in his best interest to make sure that we were knowledgeable in the product. Plus, even when my wife and I started going there, he knew we were manufacturing. And so we had a relationship with him, buying product that we weren't able to manufacture, and working with him to, for example, we got a cutting machine. I don't think he even has a cutting machine yet. So we were sharing information, how things to do things better, what we've done from what they've taught us. So it was a respectful relationship. I don't see him much anymore because I think he's sort of phasing out. But no, it wasn't. It was more through just, we were buddies in the industry, and he was sharing and we were sharing. And it was just, and then I would go over there to help do his installs. So I would volunteer my time working with them. And my wife, Annie, as well, my wife would go over and she would help sew and I would help install, and they would get sort of free help, but we'd be learning. So it was a good relationship that way. And it was, and we got a great relationship with them. So it was kind of friends that you're working with, kind of thing.
So I guess you use the seasons.
Yes.
So because you were able to go there and learn and develop the skills, or I guess speak to your customer or to your partner in Australia.
Yeah.
What was his name again? Eric, you said?
Eric Lewis, Advanced Shade Systems. Great guy.
Eric Lewis. Yeah.
And so now there's a company out of Newcastle, Australia called Shade to Order, and they do vinyl mostly and real nice stuff. So again, that's sort of an area we're not that familiar with, as far as, again, we're not doing massive, stadiums like Solaria does these beautiful large structures. We don't typically do that. Well, we don't do that. We probably call Solaria and say, hey, let's call Claude and say, how do we do this? And get Mark to work the material and all that stuff. So we're doing smaller projects, and so the guy in Australia who now is helping us with our vinyl is, again, similar relationship. We're not as close as buddies necessarily, but he's helping us with the designs, et cetera, and how best to work with, smaller vinyl product.
I have to say that's a really original and creative approach to how you guys did things, in terms of reciprocating that relationship by offering some free help and free labor in exchange for that, basically almost intellectual property that you were gaining from the relationship, and that open door or whatever. It's a very, very synergistic and very interesting approach. And I think to folks listening, it's almost kind of encourage you to think outside the box that way and come up with creative solutions when you're trying to get started in the industry. And even if you don't have the typical things to offer, and or not necessarily buy into a business or whatever, but you might have something to offer in terms help. What do they need in order to get you what you need or whatever. So I think it's a great lesson for folks who are just getting started.
Yeah, if you can work with people and be friendly and kind, and figure out how you can help each other, whether that be here in Canada or over there. It's certainly helped, and having the right person on the other end too, in Eric and this fella Craig out of Australia is out of Newcastle now, Shade to Order. I mean, those guys are very helpful and are keen to, obviously they're getting something out of it, but it's still a respectful relationship, so it's good.
You also got 2 nice summers out of it.
That's it. No question. When I moved back from Australia, not being able to surf and be in the ocean all the time was okay. This is a good solution to get over there. So we've been over there certainly, usually a month a year, maybe sometimes more, in our off season. COVID kind of put a halt on that. It's something that's been great though, to be able to do the seasons, because one of the things that's interesting is that, and encouraging for those that are listening that maybe are getting into shade sales or fabric, it is somewhat seasonal in Canada. So I was told at the beginning that you'll never make a business out of shade sales in Canada because it's seasonal, which is not true. The one thing I would say about shade sales and just about the business itself is the manufacturing part is a tricky part. I mean, making shade sales, it's a lot, stocking all the rolls. And so those that call us that often do and say they're trying to get into the business, and I'm happy to work with those people in Canada, is the best thing to do is to find someone that can provide you quality shade sales. And if you have the capability to install, then allow us to help you do that, allow us to ship you finished product. And kind of like Mark has done with his vinyl fabric for me. I think Mark and Claude helped us once on one of our rare vinyl projects. And so it's a whole thing to try to take on the role, stocking the rolls and how to manufacture. It's, as you know, Alex, I mean, manufacturing is a big big nut to crack. And so whether you're making shade sails or rolls like you are, or actual fabric, it's a lot of moving parts that the end user doesn't necessarily need to dive into. The only reason we did dive into that is because I had to get everything from Australia, and nobody could get it to me in Canada in a reasonable time. So now we are actually providing sales for people in Florida who sell shade sails. Like, so they go out on the street and they like sell to schools, because we're a reliable, quick resource for finished product. So the manufacturing side would be one I would say to steer away from. We only went to it because we had no choice. So
yeah, manufacturing is certainly, especially if you're just starting out, it's a big, big piece to swallow or chew. It's
the
tough.
overheads, the buildings, all that stuff. So
Yeah.
not that you asked me this question, but I'll offer it. My opinion would be someone that is keen to get into, say, the shade sail industry, especially for, well, small shade sails, residential, small commercial, would be to find someone like us that can provide you quality product, and you hit the ground running trying to make your sales, because a lot of money, most all the money is made on the install and that service. So that would be a tip that I would say that would be helpful to those trying to get started.
And what's nice is that you actually started small, you started slow. So you didn't go out there and, invest all kinds of money, but you started, I'm sure you had some investment to make, but you started off slow and built it up year after year, which is also a great thing to do, when you're in business. You see the improvements day after day, year after year, and that's amazing.
Yeah, very true. It's sort of in a roundabout evolution, and that's what we've evolved. And so when my dad and I first started, if the demands were what they are now, we would never have survived. So we were able to gradually grow into the demand for the business, as opposed to opening up and having this demand that you cannot fulfill and nor have the knowledge to do. So the evolution in knowledge and capability as far as producing product, and the time that took, all melded to where we are now. But you're right, the evolution was ongoing, still going, but it worked out well.
But to be fair, you guys were a big impetus in that evolution or creating that demand, especially in the Canadian market. I'm sure the U.S. market got developed a long way away, and actually I was, and we'll touch on it later actually, but I think you were probably pretty instrumental in driving that market as well, from what I know of some of the work that you've done through IFAI, actually through the IFAI US shows, and some of the training, and we'll come back to that in the next little while. But I'd like to touch on, just exactly that evolution. Like, you guys started at a certain size. You said you're up to 17 employees now. Do you want to give us a bit of an idea of what like the structure of the company has looked like, I guess, from beginning to end? And I think you're also into some different industries and different side projects, right? Like, so I'd be curious to know how your business has evolved that way.
No, thanks. And thanks for that comment. I mean, we kind of, with regard to we'll go back to the IFAI thing, but yeah, as far as the staffing goes, I mean, it was, as I say, essentially my dad and I, and then we slowly started to hire, actually, I moved west with the business. So I started in Toronto, north of Toronto. And then after I moved back from Australia, I spent some time building the business over there with my dad. And I decided I wanted to move west, less about, moving the business west, but more just the lifestyle choice. And this is where shade sails kind of started and stopped a bit, because I got into some other projects over here. My dad and I still ran the company, had the name, but we were slow. Like, we weren't doing hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. We were doing projects here and there a year for Shade Sails Canada, and would respond to those. We didn't market much, but we were there if people needed us. So, we did the Toronto Zoo in 2000, and then did pieces like that going forward year after year. In about 2011, somewhere in there, my wife we're doing projects here and there. I said, the piece that I'm really missing is the manufacturing side, because we're, again, back to what I said, we have to ship, bring stuff in. And she said, well, I can actually sew. And so it was sort of that sort of casual. And I said, well, geez, we got this old rickety machine, kind of like the stories here, working on a rickety machine, which is true, with an old wooden bench and in the back of a little store, and kind of shifting fabric from the front of the store to the back of the store, trying to make sales and learning, and so it started with that. Then you get, okay, let's order 5 rolls, and so that grew into, so we had one key person we bring on. So we had my wife and I and one person, and then I'd be going out with my dad out east to do the installs out east that we've got a couple of orders for. We'd do 2 or 3, and I'd fly back west. That just grew into, geez, it's hard to even describe, actually, because I don't even know how I got here. When I look at the window and I see 10 people working, it's kind of weird. So I'm sure it's like that for a lot of people that kind of have been there start to finish and go, how did all this grow like this? And anyway, so it grew from my wife, and now we have probably jumping a few steps, but I kind of forget how it all evolved. But just more space. We've got into now 5,000 square feet. We probably could use 7,500 to stock our rolls and people and sewing machines and sewing table. And so we've got like a sailing loft, and we've got the bridge of the ship where all the office people are, and then you've got the kitchen and the head and the galley and all those things. We kind of have these fun names because we kind of run it like a ship. So it's fun. I mean, it's as I say, in the peak season, it's evolved to 17 people and people going in and out and shipments. And so it's a regular manufacturing organization, but it's kind of amazing to see how far it has gone from our perspective, seeing it when it was just old Pops and I.
And it's kind of hard to imagine, I guess, when you first start, that you're going to have, 15 or 17 employees, right? What's your feeling on that? Obviously, you're very proud of what you've built over time, but was there ever a time where you thought like, oh boy, this could either really take off or not take off at all?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, and I'll go back to your thing, Mark, with the side business or side hustles, as they say, or whatever. Because what we were doing is, we were working in the business as opposed to on the business. So we had our heads down, weren't really looking at financials, weren't really paying attention too much to margins. We just knew that if Mark and Alex ordered shade sales, we wanted to deliver them. We wanted to deliver quality, and we would focus on that. We didn't step back until quite recently. I'm going to say aggressively within the past couple of years. It wasn't until we still really started stepping back and working on the business, running it like owners as opposed to people that work here, that we started to look at that and go, and a lot of people might be doing the same thing that are listening. They're just working and grinding it out and delivering to customers, and maybe not working on the business, but in it. And then you're realizing at the end of the day, like you say, Alex, hey, what's this actually bringing me? Can this feed the family comfortably? Is it worth my time that I'm putting in? And I said to Anne, my wife, a few times, God, like when do we start getting a reasonable paycheck that this becomes worth all these efforts? And so we did step back, we did get some consultant, we did look at the financials, we stripped some of the stuff back that we did that had no margins, low margins, and wow, the difference by actually, running it like a professional business person, which I am not, I'll be candid. I'm learning that. It wasn't natural to me, and my wife helps a lot. So that's a real important thing, to try to step back and not be buried by the work, which I realize is not super easy, but if you can't do it yourself, just ask for help. And that really helped us. So back to your question, Alex, it was a point where we thought, okay, this is kind of do or die. Not literally, like we weren't suffering, right. but it was kind of thinking, geez, when do we get a reasonable payout or a reasonable paycheck? We weren't even on payroll for quite a while. So that's all fixed. That's gotten better, and the side hustles that we've got, we've taken our scrap material, and we make bag products, grow bag products from them. And so that might have some legs with a relationship we're building with another company that might actually market that product for us. Again, it's a little bit much for us to take on. We're just us trying to keep our heads above water with the demand here for shade sales, but that's one offshoot business. And then we also got a bit into the PPE thing when COVID hit. So we're developing a product that might also grow legs. I can't really speak to those two things that much because they really don't have any proving ground for them yet, but they are things that we're working on that may well prove to be a good offshoot for Shade Sales Canada.
I really like that line, work on the business, not in the business. And as soon as you said that, I wrote it down, for the listeners. And like Mark said, like for anybody listening, like these are little tidbits that can help center a business owner, an employee, anybody, like.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right, Alex. And Brydon, thanks so much for sharing that, and with that level of candor and kind of getting into it, because I would say, and especially within Canada, that I think you guys will probably personify at least 60%, if not 80% of the businesses that are in the textile manufacturing marketplace or industry, because it does start from a mom and pop shop, so to speak, a couple that gets together and you're working on your business. And so often I've seen it so often with customers where, man, you can tell they're passionate about their business, they're good at their business, they work their tails off, but they'll kind of miss out on that management side and they may struggle, sort of thing. And I think those are those are key lessons for people to learn. And the sooner you can do that, the sooner you can get involved. And there are programs out there. I think you got to look into it. There's government programs and help to go and get these consultants to get their help so that, you know what I mean? It shouldn't be this crazy daunting expense, and that stuff should be accessible to everybody. So you gotta look into those things. And it feels, when you're in it, right? Like when you're working in it, it feels like, no, I don't have time for that. I've got to deliver. I've got to get this stuff done. And then you realize, like, when you actually do that, it buys you the time. It gets you organized, and it makes you so much better use of your time. And you start to see, you know, the things you were expecting from a business when you got it started.
That's right. Exactly. This is the freedom that I was hoping I would get by working. And as you say, a lot of these people like myself, and still now, you know, it takes over your time and your life. But you're absolutely right. And so I was adverse. I'm one of those people that was adverse to thinking, you know, look, let's just keep grinding it out. Adverse to sort of looking outside and asking for help. Not out of pride, but just out of, I'll just keep going with work and, you know, it'll pay off. Yeah. But more just out of, that's how I was, you know, you get results by working hard, as opposed to saying, okay, wait, so pause on the working hard. We appreciate the effort, Mr. Brydon. Step back and let's get some help. Ask, you know, and we still do that. So even now, so that started a couple of more years ago. We still get help coaching with how best to navigate things. And, you know, I ask this guy stuff, you know, even personal stuff about, hey, how should I handle the situation with the staff member I'm having trouble with? And they'll comment on that. It's so helpful, and it does give you a different perspective. And it also, you know, one thing about all of us, you know, it's good to be humble and go, yeah, I need to learn something. I need to make sure that I'm, you know, it's not just in my own head, and I'm checking some of the things I'm doing and making sure that my HR procedures are correct. And I'm not just, you know, firing people at whim and having trouble with staff, and all that stuff can be dealt with perhaps by stepping back and getting help, or asking, not even help, but asking for some input.
No, I mean, it seems to me your business has been built on just a level of cooperation and kind of helping each other out. And I think that's so key. I think people need to understand and realize that everybody, no matter how big or how successful you are, gets help at some point or another. And no matter how big your business is, or how big companies are, wherever, you often need some outside help or, you know, an outside look. And I think that's one of the things I love, honestly, about IFAI, and maybe it's time to, you know, to touch on that, but you work better and you move together faster when you work in a network. In fact, actually, and I may quote this wrong or whatever, but a consultant that I worked with, actually, he's originally from Africa, and he said, if you want to move fast, go alone. If you want to go far, you got to go together, so that you have that support system and that you're moving together or whatever. So you can go off for a sprint real quick on your own, but you're not going to get far, and the pack's going to, you know, catch up to you, sort of thing. Whatever, you need that support system, and I think that's very key. And, you know, we all got to realize we got to either, you know, swallow our pride or pick our heads up and you know, and get some help, because it definitely makes things easier in the long run.
Yeah, and to say, the IFAI, sorry, Alex, the IFAI, you know, that network, you know, I know you guys from IFAI, and I know guys in California, other shade sale companies. We've worked, going back to your comment there about working with IFAI and educating, and, you know, we've helped companies down in the States with education on shade and all that kind of stuff. So those networks are great.
Yeah, I really like the IFAI, or anytime I go to a trade show, even if we're just walking the show, meeting people, learning about people's different ideas, and then cooperating or finding a way to cooperate is always great. And the learning aspect is so valuable, especially for a young person. And even just hearing you guys speak, I mean a young person in this industry. I've been in the industry for 8 years, you guys much longer, but it's just, it's inspiring to listen to you guys and see your perspective as well. And I hope the audience also gets that from the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. I mean, and you know, it might sound to the listeners that this was not planned. We aren't plugging the IFAI. We just have to be we're talking about it. One of the first things I did, actually, you remind me, was go to an IFAI show in LA, because I didn't get to travel much business-wise. So I thought, hey, maybe this is an excuse to go down to LA, stay in some cheap hotel, which I did. And it was like an architectural, I don't even think it was IFAI. I think it was related. I think they were
surfing, I bet.
Yeah, exactly. So I got, and I think I actually met Alex's uncles from Naizil, and I met all these people way back in 2000 something, early 2000. And so it was just exciting to go. And as you say, Alex, it's not only is it a good learning network thing, but it's also quite exciting seeing people in the industry. Wow, what are they doing? And you learn a lot, and then you can take that away and create those relationships, work with them, or create your own ideas out of that. So the shows are great for that. And so Nashville will be great if it happens. With COVID, who knows, man? I don't know. Be good to and not we won't be surfing in Nashville, but we'll be checking out the blues bars and stuff like that.
I hear there's great live music, and I'm actually I'm pretty excited about it. At this point, I think I'm planning on going. I think.
Well, I'm hoping, man.
Oh yeah, we're planning on being there as well, and we can't wait to see people again.
Yeah, I did want to mention though, because I think for some of these people that are working in their business and less so on it, a lot of these people are probably like, I can't go to Nashville. I don't have time to. And so it's for those that might be on the fence about it, going to these network things, and these, especially sometimes people I think that it's down the States, it's more States eccentric, the IFAI, and there is a large part of that, but there's still a lot of network down there, there's a lot of learning to do. So I think if people are some of our members that are listening, Mark and I and Alex have gone to many of these shows. If you're sometimes thinking, should I go to these shows, and maybe you haven't, it's worth going. I would say flat, just as a business owner in the industry. And again, this is not a plug for IFAI. This is just, hey, from a business standpoint, it's great to go and see us and get our members working together. Like the Canadian people can, more of us working together and creating this network. And then we've got our own little thing going. So hopefully that grows more. I mean, we've been doing this IFAI Canada board for a while, but hey, I like this effort that we're trying to do to keep our membership, involved.
And Nashville's a great location for it. So it also helps when we have such a nice location as Nashville.
Yeah.
All right. I think we paid the bills. I think we're good. But to be fair, on the topic of IFAI, so Brydon, you originally went to go get help, to go get support for your business or whatever, but then you've kind of evolved to be kind of a key person. I mean, full disclosure, Brydon is the immediate past chair of the IFAI Canada board, but you've also been heavily involved in trainings and actually providing trainings at the IFAI US base. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it was opportunity to share some of the stuff we learned in Australia, with our colleagues down there that weren't really being done up here, or the knowledge wasn't up here yet. So it was, we would do, what did they call originally, shade clinics. And then I think there was campfire sessions and wholesale shade. Greg and Patrick have sort of picked up on doing that too. They're out of San Diego. So some of these shade education things that I think we were original doing it, but then we passed the IFAI passed the baton to wholesale shade for a bit. Then we're back in again in Nashville doing some shade clinics, I think. And, I really like to do those things to help people that are going through the same sort of initiation into the industry and say, hey, I'm happy to share with you things to avoid or best ways to go about it, or who should you source for X, Y, Z. It's almost like if you see people you want to help and go, okay, don't do that because that's the wrong road. It's going to waste so much time, et cetera. Kind of like what we're talking about with the help we've had. So we've been doing that, and so excited to do it again this year in some capacity with the IFAI, and we'll just continue doing it as much as we're welcome to do so by them. So they've invited us back, so we'll be doing that again this year.
I think that's a great example of paying it forward from, like from some of the way you got help from, whether it be from your Australian counterparts that you were working with and your friends really that went from cooperators to basically to long-term friends, and you build out those relationships, and then you've kind of turned around and paid it forward in the industry. And I'm guessing that's probably brought a lot back to you as well. Like some of these relationships that you've created. You've mentioned that you're even supplying shade sales to folks down as far south as Florida. I'm guessing that's probably not what you expected in the beginning when you were doing these trainings and kind of setting up and providing these tools, but yet that's what's come out of it, right? So like it's a great lesson in paying it forward.
Yeah, no, you're right. And that's not why you do things, usually. You usually do things just to try to be helpful. And then someone says, hey, I could actually use some of that help in a broader capacity. And you say, okay, well, let's work together. So that's happened for sure a few times. And those relationships that you built from those honest, helpful pay it forward situations benefit both them and us. Sure, we are able to sell a product, but they're also benefiting from our knowledge and quality product that they never have to go back and fix and all that stuff. So yeah, it works for both parties. And obviously, again, not necessarily the reason why we do it, but that's certainly the positive side of it.
No, that's fantastic. Actually, I think we'll probably be wrapping it up soon, but I thought maybe we should touch on something that's a little that's pretty timely. I'm curious because you mentioned the PP&E, so it was kind of started a little bit. Has Shade Sales made any adjustments or changes in dealing with the pandemic to either your business model or your approach going forward? And I guess as a second part of the question, like, do you think those things will stick, or do you think they're really just temporary measures to get through the current situation?
Yeah, thanks. And I don't want to bore people with the COVID, and nor do you with the COVID. What did you do for COVID? But
Right.
I think we all freaked out and said, okay, what is the world going to look like? Do people buy shade cells anymore? I honestly didn't know, like most. So I think a lot of us went through that. And so there was a time there, early COVID, which would have been, I guess, April, May. So everything was put on hold. Everybody was laid off temporarily, because we didn't know. And so, as everybody, that said, shade sales did ramp back up, but in that layoff time, we had some doctors in the town here who were dealing with this new virus they didn't know what to do with, and they asked us to make some protective gear for them. And
Right.
so, could we make this because they didn't have the product? And I can't really disclose that yet because it's not public. We worked on a product with them, a prototype thing, and so then we got swamped with shade sales, as I'm sure a lot of the industry did, with lumber being crazy prices, construction, all that. So we're all pretty familiar with where that's gone. I think I'm glad to hear that most people in the shade industry or in the tent industry, et cetera, and you guys are selling product out the door, which is great. So that went crazy, and so that sort of put the PPE on pause for a while. But ironically, through some other connections, but didn't even plan it, a connection in PPE who could potentially take this product to market, which we don't have the capacity to do. So that could, from the COVID thing, grow legs. That's kind of what I referenced before. I'm not certain yet. I look forward to another podcast where I can say, hey, this happened and it's exciting and it's a side hustle or a side business that can't come out of this COVID and shade sales. But at this point, it's still a prototype, really.
All right, but just so you know, we got it on tape. You committed to a second podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited. This was fun.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us on the first episode of IFAI Talking Textiles. This podcast is brought to you by IFAI, a not-for-profit association representing the international specialty fabrics marketplace. Learn more about several different events and workshops IFAI hosts throughout the year at ifai.com/events.